Welcome into Texans Today, everybody. I'm your host, Jeremy Chuggs, and coming up on today's program, I wanted to talk about some guys who I think really need to step up in Week 3. Obviously, we know there's a lot of Texans injuries. We saw the injury report happen yesterday, Wednesday, September 18th, but I want to look at today some of the top matchups going into Week 3 and which guys need to step up, and the Texans are really looking at to win this game against the Minnesota Vikings. But before we get into that, it's worked every single week. Texans are 2-0, so I'm not stopping it. Don't jinx it. Like the video if you want the Texans to win on Sunday. Each, video that I've done this prior to game day, we've gotten at least 400 likes. And the Texans have won each time. And I'm not saying those two things correlate, but I'm also not saying that, Producer Cullen. So if you want the Texans to get a dub on Sunday, go down and like the video. It's scientifically proven the Texans will win if you like the video. So who am I to go up against science? I mean, who am I? Who am I? Let's get into these top Week 3 matchups. First up, Derek Stingley versus Justin Jefferson. Can Sting stop arguably the best wide receiver in the National Football League in Justin Jefferson? I mean, through 2 games, 8 receptions, 192 yards, 2 touchdowns for Jetta. And the spotlight is going to be on this Texans secondary. I mean, Justin Jefferson is arguably the best receiver in the game. And Stingley, I've been singing his praises all offseason. I've been saying he can be top 5. He can be one of the best in the NFL. And that starts with matchups like this, going up against arguably the best guy opposing you. So Stingley will have a huge spotlight on him. And as I looked at the film study, I went into NFL Next Gen and kind of looked at all the completions that Stingley has allowed this season. Honestly, the only one deep, the only one, that he hasn't kept in front of him has been that long ball to Alec Pierce. And I'm not convinced that was totally on Derek Stingley. I mean, he was able to recover way better than Jimmy Ward was. I think they were in a cover 2, and, Jimmy Ward was supposed to have the deep help, or maybe a cover 4, and Jimmy Ward was supposed to have that kind of inside contain for Derek Stingley, and he wasn't able to do that. But besides that, the thing that Stingley needs to work on, and the thing that is going to, really hinder him, is his tackling. He struggled in tackling up against the Chicago Bears. They kept on kind of picking on him on those short wide receiver screens, those quick wide receiver outs where Caleb Williams just got the ball out of his hand. And DJ Moore made Derek Stingley miss multiple times. So if he can get his tackling down, I think that's going to be a big part of this game. But deep coverage, covering him downfield, I think Stingley can definitely keep up with Justin Jefferson. I just hope I don't end up eating my words at the end of this week. Let me know, though, your confidence level in Stingley this weekend. I want to hear it from you. Scale it 1 to 10. Let me know. 1, you have no confidence in Derek Stingley at all. 10, you think he's going to shut down Justin Jefferson. YouTube, they're going to throw an ad break here. Perfect timing. Scroll on down to the comment section, and I want to hear from you folks at home. Be honest with me. Your confidence level in Derek Stingley. I'm at around an 8. I have faith in Stingley. I do. But going up against the very best in the NFL, I just really hope he can show up and show out this week. I'm expecting a lot out of Stingley, and I've, bought in a lot of stock in Derek Stingley. Like I've said, this entire offseason, I believe he is one of the best in the entire NFL. Now he just has to go out and prove it up against one Justin Jefferson. And I thought this was an interesting stat from ML Football, because if Stingley's able to shut down Justin Jefferson, I also have faith in Kamari Lassiter on the other end, taking away Jalen Naylor or whatever other wide receiver the Minnesota Vikings want to get involved. This from ML Football. The Texans are the only team with 2 cornerbacks ranked in the top 10 for passer rating allowed when targeted. Kamari Lassiter, 0, first in the NFL. Derek Stingley Jr., 45.7. That is 8th in the NFL. So both guys have played outstanding so far. Also, with the Chicago Bears, a little help from the pass rush. They were absolutely getting after Caleb Williams. So I want to see, can they continue this going into Week 3? Let's look at the next top matchup that I want to look at. The Texans offensive line versus the Vikings front 7. And this one gets a little bit interesting, a little dicey with the injury reports coming out this past week for the Houston Texans. As we look at the Texans depth chart, Drew Scruggs trying to come back from injury. He was out week 2 up against the Chicago Bears dealing with a groin injury. And then also, Jarrett Patterson has not been practicing either. So a little conundrum the Texans have at the center position. Then what do you do if that happens? They obviously signed Scott Quesenberry to the practice squad, but the move would be Kendrick Green, who I thought played pretty well last year before he got injured. Obviously, every single Texans offensive lineman last year, I feel like, got injured at some point in time. Kendrick Green played 3 games, 0 sacks allowed. Remember, they traded from him from the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I thought he's looked really good with his time with the Texans. If he steps in at center, I'm actually just as confident as him as I was in Jarrett Patterson. You know, he's been in the league. He's played in the league for a while. Originally played center with the Steelers. That was his original position with the Steelers in the NFL. So him slotting in at center, I'm not too worried about that. Another reason why they kept him on the roster, because of that versatility. He can play guard and he can play center. But this Vikings front seven has looked ferocious under Brian Flores to start the 2024 NFL season. Obviously, you know, same face, new place. Jonathan Grenard, he was with the Texans last year. He is looking really good with the Vikings. You know, not the sack numbers yet, but I talked to our Vikings host, Patrick Seatman, and he said, Grenard, he's top 10 in pressures in the NFL once again. Remember, last year, he was amazing getting pressure on the quarterback for the Houston Texans. He's looked good. Andrew Van Ginkel, a free agency signing that they had this past offseason, he has looked amazing. And Patrick Jones is second. I know you see Dallas Turner on there, you know, the first-round pick for the Vikings, who was on the injury report this week. But Patrick Jones, the second, a former mid-round pick, has been turning heads so far. He made Trent Williams look silly on multiple plays last week. That's a name you got to keep an eye out for. And we talk about, you know, Brian Flores in this defense. The inside linebackers blitz a ton. Same thing. You know, same face, new place. Blake Cashman played for the Texans last year. He has been outstanding for the Vikings. And former UDFA Ivan Pace Jr. has really stepped up and has solidified himself as one of the, you know, best starters at the off-ball linebacker spot in the National Football League. The Texans offensive line, bottom line, just needs to be better as a whole. Regardless of who's playing it at center, Laramie Tunsil still is one of the best left tackles in pass protection in the entire NFL. But he's had quite a few false starts. And I'm looking at Titus Howard on the other side. I think he needs to step it up and play a little bit better too. We need this offensive line to step up and play better. Stop it with the penalties. Too many false starts, too many holding penalties, too many infractions on this offensive line. As well as I want to see them be able to create some run lanes for whoever is going to start at running back for this Texans team. I have some more top matchups that we need to look at in just a moment, but I couldn't do today's show if it wasn't for our amazing sponsors over at Factor Meals. Easy, nutritious, delicious meals with, you know, minimal effort. I've been recently trying to get on track with my health, and today's sponsor, Factor Meals, has been a huge help. Meet your wellness goals in time for football season thanks to the menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes, so no matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy nutritious, great-tasting meals. Make today the day you kickstart a new healthy routine. What are you waiting for? Treat yourself to restaurant-quality meals that feature premium ingredients like filet mignon, shrimp, and even blackened salmon, and you can keep kitchen time to a minimum. And it's not even just, you know, the prep and having to cook everything. It's also the dishes. The dishes are one of the biggest one. Every time I cook, I look at the sink and I'm like, oh, I really do not want to clean up those dishes. With Factor, it eliminates that. No dishes. You just throw away the tin after you are done. So get started today with an amazing deal for our listeners. Head to factormeals.com/TexansChat50 and use code TexansChat50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code TexansChat50 at factormeals.com/TexansChat50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. Now, let's look at another top matchup that I will be keeping a close eye out on for this week. It's going to be the Texans edge rushers versus the Vikings tackles. The Vikings have been one of the best offensive lines in the NFL this season, but especially when you start off looking at their bookend tackles. Brian O'Neill has played very well. Christian Darrisaw has played very well. Neither of them, I would say, is, top 3 in their position, top 2, but they're both one of the best at their individual positions in the entire National Football League. And remember, Danielle Hunter went up against them in practice all of last season and the year before. And the Texans' defensive line, they're off to a hot start themselves. Danielle Hunter has 13. Will Anderson has 12. They rank 2nd and 3rd in the NFL in pressures per next-gen stats, shaping up as the best pass rushing duo in football for 2024 so far. So I'm really looking at Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson. They had an insane week 2 up against the Bears, which, albeit the Bears' offensive line stinks, now they go up against a little bit better competition. Can they repeat that performance into week 3? Because if they're able to get pressure with 4, I know the Texans sent a lot of exotic pressures, and they sent a lot of 5-6-man blitzes up against Caleb Williams, especially in 2nd and 3rd and long. Against Sam Darnold, the guy who's been in the league for a little bit longer, I don't know if they do that. I think they try to get more pressure with 4 up against this Vikings offensive line and this Vikings offense. If they can get pressure with 4, with Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter, and then you have Foley Fodakasi, Mario Edwards Jr. blitzing up the middle, I think that'll spell really good things for this Texans team up against the Minnesota Vikings. Now, let's look at the next matchup. It's going to be Diggs and Tank versus the Vikings secondary. Obviously, we know Nico Collins has been absolutely feasting through the first 2 weeks in the NFL. Here are the receiving yard leaders after week 2. Nico Collins, number 1 with 252 yards on the season. Absolutely bananas. If you drafted him in fantasy, you are having the time of your life right now. I mean, he is absolutely eating. So that makes me think, the Minnesota Vikings, they signed a really good cornerback in Stefon Gilmore this offseason. He's played pretty well for them. Will he be shadowing Nico Collins throughout this season? If that is the case, which, Colin, we don't have to go to this. I don't think that's right for this season. But if that is the case for Stefon Gilmore, what are we going to see from Tank Dell and Stefon Diggs? Both these guys played decent through the first 2 weeks of the year, but it's been Nico Collins carrying this passing game for sure. So if I'm looking at this Texans wide receiver depth chart, I know I have 3 wide receiver 1s listed on the depth chart, but truly it's, as of right now, Nico's wide receiver 1 and Stefon Diggs, Tank Dell are wide receiver 2A and 2B as the season has started so far. This will be a huge week for Diggs and Tank Dell. So I'm really looking for those guys to step up, especially if Stefon Gilmore is shadowing Nico Collins. I think Nico still can work on Stefon Gilmore. I'm not saying that he's going to be shut down by Gilmore whatsoever. But going up against the Vikings second, third cornerbacks, I think Tank Dell, Stefon Diggs, they have really, really good matchups this week. So I want to see them eat a little bit more. Tank Dell hasn't been on the same page with C.J. Stroud to start the season. So I want to see him get worked a little bit more. They've been working him a ton on those, jet motion sweeps and end arounds. I want to see him work on his route tree down the field and be able to beat those guys one-on-one. Same with Stefon Diggs. He's looked really good so far. Hasn't gotten, the amount of targets as we thought maybe, or the amount of yards that we thought. He's had, some decent catches. He's had a couple touchdowns, but not the yardage that we really think of with Stefon Diggs. I want to see them absolutely feast in week 3. Lastly, Bobby Slowick versus Brian Flores. I think this is going to be a very interesting match, and I really do think Slowick got a little bit too much pressure after that week 2 win up against the Chicago Bears. I saw people all over Twitter, all online saying, Slowick called an awful game. Slowick didn't, wasn't able to draw anything up. Slowick did an awful job up against the Bears defense, which maybe he didn't call the best game as we've seen from him as an offensive coordinator for this Texans team. But I think he's still obviously one of the best coordinators in the NFL for good reason. He had a ton of head coaching interviews this offseason. Teams are very interested in him. He does a really good job at calling plays for this offensive side of the football for the Texans. I think, obviously, the Bears defense just really good. The Vikings defense is also really good. Can Slowick have a bounce-back week and able to, draw up new plays, be able to take the weaknesses for this Vikings defense and really exploit it with the weapons that he has for this Texans offense? We know Joe Mixon, doubtful to play this week. Dameon Pierce, his availability is up in the air. Cam Akers, former Viking, can Slowick use Cam Akers in a way that can really get him going this week. I want to see also possibly some British Brooks. I mean, we saw Cam Akers play really well and then get down to the goal line and he fumbled. I want to see British Brooks in those goal line packages, in those third and short, fourth and short packages, and really let him burst up the middle or really kind of bowl over guys to get some yardage. And I thought this was interesting too from Ben Fennell. He said the Brian Flores versus CJ Stroud battle ahead is a must-see this week. Zero look, bailing to cover 2 is a staple on 3rd and 4th down. And what he means by that is the defense of Brian Flores that the Vikings run right now, they do a ton of pre-snap movement. You'll see the safeties, they're walking down, then they're bailing back out. Linebackers, they're bailing back out, and then they're coming on a blitz. You don't know where pressures are going to come a lot of times pre-snap against this Vikings defense. So it's going to take CJ Stroud really up here to ID guys, really see what is going on pre-snap, because that's what they do. They try to confuse you a ton. The defensive linemen are moving around. The defensive tackles are moving around. Everybody is making it to where they don't want you to know what they're running or what play they're trying to do pre-snap. They're really trying to disguise every single thing they do. And for young quarterbacks, that can be really tough. So on 3rd and 4th downs, especially whenever the Vikings are sending pressure or maybe not sending pressure, it's going to be a lot on CJ Stroud to kind of put on his thinking cap and really say, hey, this is what I see in film. This is what I've seen before. Can I diagnose this to put my guys in the best position to pick up this 3rd or 4th down conversion? It's going to be really interesting because Flores, one of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL, in my opinion. It's going to be a real litmus test for CJ Stroud. That's all I have for you on tap for today's show. If you want more Texans news and rumors, the latest updates around the team, go ahead and give me a follow on Twitter at Jeremy Chuggs. And as always, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We're bringing you daily Texans videos all year long for free. We're not behind some paywall. We're not trying to get extra money out of you. I'm just trying to cultivate the largest Texans fan group on YouTube here on Texans Today. We've done a pretty good job. We just passed 17,000 subscribers. Why not join us and root on the Texans all season